Hello, this is QuickSkillz, and today we're going to be taking a look at another 12TB gaming hard drive found on Aliexpress. I did review a very similar product like this on my channel before, so be sure to watch this video if you want to compare the two. This 12TB gaming hard drive is very similar to a lot of devices found on Aliexpress, so if you want to make sure you're getting the product that I'm reviewing here today, be sure to use the link in the description below. I'll also put it here on the screen just so you don't forget. Today's video will be a complete walkthrough of the 5 systems found on this device. However, we will not have time to go over every single emulator or ROM. So if you do have a question about an emulator or ROM that you want to make sure works before buying this device, drop me a comment. I'll test it out. I'll let you know what my findings are, and if I find that I need to make a video on it, I'll be sure to do that for you as well. Let's take a look at today's date. It is October 9th, and the delivery date, arrival date, looks to be October 17th to the 26th, so it will take 2 to 3 weeks to receive your device, and make sure that you plan that in when buying this, because if you're buying this for a gift or a holiday, you may not receive it in time since this is not Amazon and you're not going to receive your device in 2 to 3 days. The other thing I want to point out is today's price for the device is $184. Just a reminder, if you use my link in the description, it'll take you to the exact listing that I'm showing you here today. There are no minimum system requirements listed, however it does mention that the higher the computer configurations are, the smoother the games will run. I am using an RTX 3080 and use that as a benchmark for performance found on this review. The other thing is if you are purchasing this for a Mac, be sure to proceed with caution because it only supports Windows 7 and above systems. Installation of this hard drive was quite easy. It took me all of 5 minutes to get it up and running. All I did was take the included power supply and plug it in, take the USB 3 transfer cable and plug it into my PC, and I was able to see these files here. There was an included insert that showed you exactly what to install and how to install it, and once I was done, it was telling me to go to this core Type R folder and launch this button right here. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's start by launching Core Type R. That's going to take us to a screen that has every system included on this hard drive, easy to access. So here we have the Hyperspin Attraction, Tekno Parrot, Kodi, Launchbox, Playnite, and Retrobat. I will be going one by one to each of these systems, loading up an emulator or two, and testing out a couple of ROMs. If you want to skip ahead, go to the description of this video. I have provided timestamps for every single one of these systems, so if there's one in particular you want to see in action, be sure to skip ahead. The other thing I want to mention is that there is a specific emulator, system, or ROM that I didn't cover thoroughly enough for you. Be sure to leave me a comment in the video and I'll test it out. I'll leave you my feedback, and if I think it's relevant, I will provide a video as well. So without further ado, let's start off by loading Hyperspin Attraction. This is going to be something that I reviewed in another video, so be sure to go back and watch the other 12TB video that I provided. In this hard drive, we do have less systems included in this Hyperspin Attraction. One thing I will say in using the Hyperspin Attraction, and it is a complaint that you're going to find quite often, is if you're in a MAME style game, you're going to spend a lot of time configuring each and every game, because by default it's going to load in your controller or your keyboard as player 1 or a mix of the two, and you have to spend time configuring that every time you play a game. And so if you're looking for a very easy solution to play, you're probably not going to have a lot of games you're going to want to load off of Hyperspin. But I do want to show you something else. Tekno Parrot is also another Hyperspin system, but it is narrowed down to about 125 games that use more of an arcade style configuration. So you can see here we have Project Diva. We can go through, a lot of these games are newer arcade style games, but again, you are loading them off of the Hyperspin loader. I did have a lot of success playing these games by launching them directly off the included emulator. So this one is Tekno Parrot. I just went right into the Tekno Parrot hard drive or emulator and loaded these games from here and had much easier success rather than loading them from this Hyperspin launcher. So keep that in mind. When buying this device, you're probably going to end up using your Hyperspin Attraction and Tekno Parrot for the ROMs, but not necessarily loading them from here. You may have better success off a Launchbox or Retrobat. So let's open up Launchbox. Another thing I want to mention is that it will automatically put Bigbox, which is kind of cool because it's a very user-friendly way to access your ROMs that are on your device. I am more comfortable with the standard Launchbox, and it is available. You have to dig around through the files, but you can find the standard Launchbox window. But if you want something a little bit more consumer friendly, Bigbox by default will show up here. I'm really excited about this because you can see there's Xbox and Xbox 360. Let me load up an Xbox game for you. So you can see here we have Fable. You can go through, make some minor changes to this specific game, or you can launch it and play it. Here you can see the Xbox system loading up within the emulator. As I mentioned before, I did play this system for hours, so I did know that Fable was going to work. But you can see here I'm playing Fable for the Xbox, and it looks pretty good. I wouldn't say it's a perfect emulation of the game, but it is functional. The frame rate is quite nice, and the graphics are decent. To exit out of this game, all I'm going to do is hit select and start at the same time. Let's go into the Xbox 360 and see how that handles. So through Launchbox, we have the Xbox 360 booting up. So as you can see, we have Fable 2 launched on this device. Just a reminder, you do not actually own any of these games. You're emulating them through ROMs and emulators. So some of these emulators have known issues with specific games. As you can see here, I have some frame rate issues with Fable 2, but some of these Xbox 360 games might handle well without any type of frame rate issues. So unfortunately, because you don't own this game and you're just emulating it, some games are going to be well supported while others are going to suffer, such as this one. To exit, all I did was push start and select at the same time. And we're going to scroll through and see what else is on here. One thing I do want to mention is that the collection of Switch games was quite extensive, and I did launch Breath of the Wild, or actually Tears of the Kingdom, and it worked just fine. I actually reviewed a Switch game on the Hyperspin Attraction, and I was unable to really get it working. It was dealing with very bad frame rate issues, where Tears of the Kingdom was working just fine on this hard drive. So I know it's not my computer performance holding me back. I think what it is running the Switch off of the Hyperspin Attraction is not the way you want to run it. You may want to run this off of Launchbox, which is how I am choosing to play this Switch game. And I'm going to show you right now, Tears of the Kingdom looks great. And we do have an autosave from when I was testing this out, so let's go ahead and jump right back into the game. And I do own a Switch, and I do have this game pretty much beaten, and I can tell you that everything feels right. You know, I don't think there's any kind of frame rate issues. Everything seems to be exactly the way I remember it on the Switch, and it's kind of cool to be able to play it on my computer because, quite honestly, the Switch on a TV is not the same as playing this on my computer monitor. So as you can see, I am playing Tears of the Kingdom, and I want to say that the collection of Switch games on here is quite impressive. So let's take a look and see all the Switch games that come included on here, and if they all handle as well as Tears of the Kingdom, which is one of the newest games made for the Switch, then I'm going to take a guess that a lot of these Switch games are going to work. I did have to do a little configuring within the emulator. When you're in the game, you have to hit tab or escape to minimize the window, and then you have to just turn on your Bluetooth controller. Otherwise, it's going to have you play using your keyboard. So again, Launchbox is the way you're going to access a lot of these consoles. You have GameCube here, you have Xbox 360 and Xbox that seem to be working okay. But even some of these other systems were found on the Hyperspin are going to work way better here. So here we can see PS3, PS2, PS2 Europe, PlayStation 1. We also have the Vita, and I don't see it here, but we know we have the Vita. Windows are going to be Windows games, so we have Divinity 2, Fortnite, Might of Magic Heroes 4. Not a real big Windows list, but you do have Playnite, which is going to have more PC games in there. So again, Launchbox, really great. A lot of back-end configuration you can do when loading a game. So if the game's not working right away, you are able to access this menu here before launching the game. You can mark it as broken. You can mark it as completed. You beat the game. You can also open it in the emulator. So it says Open Dolphin. So that's going to be the way you make changes internally to the emulator that's launching this game. Bigbox also has a ton of support so that you can modify your experience with this, and I don't want to make this a big box tutorial, but you can YouTube a lot of questions that you might have and hopefully find your answers. And don't hit this shutdown button. I did that before and it actually shut down my computer. You just want to exit. Next up we have Playnite. These are going to be all your Windows-based games, and I think it also has a very nice collection of games. I do want to go through and play a lot of these. And because it is a copy of a Windows game, as long as your system requirements meets the system requirements for that game, which you probably will if you buy this device, your experience is going to be just as that if you downloaded this off of any other way to buy it, Steam or any other way. As you can see here, the list is not huge, but we have some gems in here such as Resident Evil 4. This isn't the new one, but it is a port of Resident Evil 4 before they redid it. Resident Evil 7, Walking Dead, Red Dead Redemption 2. I've been meaning to play that game and beat it. Grand Theft Auto 5, Elden Ring. So you can see here, not a complete list of games, Cyberpunk 2077, but the games on here are going to work. So let's go ahead and launch one just to show that it works. I always like launching fighting games because there's usually not a lot of backstory that we need to go through to play the game. So you can see here it says King of Fighters Steam Edition. So we're playing the game, everything seems to be working just fine. Timing, no frame rate issues. Actually works a lot better than the Xbox and Xbox 360 that we had, but partly because we're not emulating, we're actually playing the game directly installed off the hard drive, where the Xbox and the Xbox 360, it's loading a ROM through an emulator, and that emulator may or may not support the game very well, like we saw with Fable. So let's get out of Playnite and check another system. So to do that, we'll just exit Playnite. And next up we have Retrobat. This is a great launcher for MAME style games. You're gonna see what I mean in just a second. So I will say that if you're in here playing a game, it's probably gonna work. But what's really nice about launching from this is that there is some support when you open up the game. So you can see at the bottom, you have the select button. That select button is going to open up a menu that's going to give you the ability to change some things. So if we want to push the select button, we can filter games by text. We can also see advanced system options. This is where you're going to select the emulator that you want to launch alongside the game. So sometimes you don't get it to work very easily with Launchbox. Try it in Retrobat and try messing around with the emulator. That can help the performance of the game. And so let's take a quick look at the 360, because I know we had a little bit of issue. I don't think there's any other emulators other than the one provided, but let me just see here if we have any support for Fable. So we see we have the Xenia and Xenia Canary, so maybe by switching from one to the other, you might be able to have a better experience. There's also visual rendering. You can change these around. What I like about this is that you do have more control. Now you may not get the game to work perfectly or work at all, but there is a lot more support within Retrobat than you're going to find in Hyperspin. And here's the PS Vita. Did not have that in any of the other systems, so we can take a look at all the games included with the PS Vita. So I tried to launch a PS Vita game, and the touch sensitivity of the screen was very difficult to emulate. I do not want to go through and test every single one of these games here, but just proceed with caution on the PS Vita. But it is nice to see the ROMs are there. But you can see here from Retrobat, you can launch just about any game, and having back-end support when launching the game is going to give you a little bit more success rate when launching a ROM. And just know that if you try to launch this game in one area or the other, try holding the select button so that you can get more control with your emulators and ROMs. So we do have Die Hard Arcade loaded up on Retrobat in the Sega Saturn category. We're going to see how this handles. What's really interesting is the game is playing at an incredibly fast speed. This is something that you can fix if you do mess with the settings. So I'll try to troubleshoot this for you here. Let's exit out. Let's hold down the A button. We're going to go to Advanced Game Options. We're going to go to Emulator, and typically when it's auto, it goes to the first one. So let's try the next one and see if that has any effect on the gameplay. I can tell right away that the game is performing at a more regular pace. And that right there is exactly why I like Retrobat for loading a lot of these games, because it was just as easy of a fix as that, going in, switching the emulator, and now we have a game that was running extremely fast. Now we have it performing at a normal speed. And it's not able to jump, but I did find the button. It is the right shoulder button to jump. This game is working now after switching the emulator, and that is something that you will find very hard to do with Hyperspin Attraction. You might be able to do it with Launchbox, you just got to do it before you launch the game. But I do find that Retrobat is the quickest way. You just hold A, get this sub menu here, go to Advanced Options, and now you're able to make changes and hopefully fix the game. It will not work for every game, but you can see here you have access to controls. That's going to be unique to this game, but that is one of the things that I compliment Retrobat for. That is going to take us to the end of this video. However, before we call it a day, I do want to give you my final verdict. I think for the low price of $185, having a 12 terabyte hard drive loaded with all these emulators and ROMs in an easy to access manner is great value. You have access to games that span from 2010 on all the way down to the 70s. And so to have access to all of this in one house is amazing. However, you're going to deal with a lot of troubleshooting. So if you use the Hyperspin Attraction, for instance, there's going to be a lot of games that just will not load. You'll have to find it in Retrobat or Launchbox to get it to work. However, I will say that once you figure out how to get it to work, you are going to have a good experience with those games, but just know that you're going to need a lot of troubleshooting for a lot of these games. They're not polished, they're not always going to be easy to launch. The things that I do not like about this device is that it comes with a lot of bloat. Like, we do not need Core Type R to launch a launcher. So what I mean by that is, let's exit out of here. Let's shut this down. And once you have your hard drive connected to your computer, all you're going to do is go to Collections, you're going to go to Computers, you're going to go to ROMs, and you can see here we can just launch Retrobat right off this button right here. Likewise, if we want to go to Launchbox, not only can we launch the Bigbox, we can also launch regular old Launchbox to access all the files on here. The other thing is we have Hyperspin. Here it is. And if you want the variation called Tekno Parrot Hyperspin, click that one here. So you do not need Type R. Type R is basically taking all of those folders and putting them in a way that you can launch them from a launcher. The other thing is that I have found that when using Core Type R, it does prevent the Xbox 360 from working very well. So I had a lot of success going into Launchbox and launching 360 games from there and having a little bit less of a headache getting a game to run properly when not using it through the core. So some things that I love about this device is that it has a ton of ROMs and emulators that just in it by themselves, getting them all together and getting them in the right folders and right, files. If you've ever set up a retro console on your own, it is very painstakingly slow, and also it's not always the easiest to find all these ROMs. So having them all in one location is the best thing for me from this device. The other thing is that unless you're very tech savvy, you're gonna come across a lot of headaches that can be solved, but sometimes you may not have a solution and you may spend a lot of time trying to work one up only to find that the emulator or ROM is just not supported at this time. Well, that concludes the video. Just a reminder, if you are thinking about purchasing this device, use the description in this video to make sure you're getting the one shown here.